right, everybody. We are going to end our day with staff wellness, and what a way to end the day, right? I know all of you have a lot on your plate, busy schedules. It's been a busy day, and we're going to ease in and end your day in a way where you get to think about yourselves. Because if you think about that pyramid, who's holding it up? All of you, every single day. And if that foundation starts to crack a little bit, it impacts every level of that pyramid. And I don't think we often get enough time in our days to really think about, what about me and what about us? You know, what can we do to be building ourselves up like we do our families, our children, our coworkers? How do we turn that internally back to ourselves so we can keep that really firm foundation? So I'm Mary McCrane. I think I've met some of you out there. I've been working for the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services for over 20 years as a social and emotional consultant. I'm part of a group that started the Infant Early Childhood Mental Health Consultation program years ago, and I have hung out in Michigan, and I'm really happy. For a fun fact, if any of you have been in Michigan for a while, you might understand when I say that I'm a Youper. Does anybody know what that is? Yeah? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I heard an oh, yeah back there. Anyway, I was born in the Upper Peninsula. Then my family moved us away when I was 10 to Arizona. Talk about a culture change. And now I've been back in Oakland County for a long, long time. So anyway, glad to be here with all of you. So just give me a thumbs up if you're not able to hear me okay, and I'll raise my voice a little bit here. But what I wanted to cover today is really talk about not just the stress that you all feel day to day, but also what is our historical backpack that we carry around with us? What have we experienced in our early childhood, in our families? When we go into a classroom, every single one of us has something in our backpack of experience that can cause stress, that can cause triggers, that can cause things that are even unexpected to us sometimes. So I think when we talk about wellness, we also have to think about our own early experiences as well. And then we'll get into adult resilience and what can we do to bring more wellness into our life. And we'll have strategies and tools as well. So when we think about past experiences before current experiences, how many of you have heard about the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study? All right, so this isn't going to be new to some of you, but again, just a time to sit and reflect. And instead of thinking, we think a lot about throughout our day about the families and children, which is what we need to do and what's really important, but this is going to be your time to really think about you. So when we think about the impact of our own adverse childhood experiences, when you look at this study, it's an ongoing collaboration between the CDC and Kaiser Permanente, and it began in the 90s. This study is still going on. But when you think about our health care, and many times there are certain things like maternal depression, other health care risks and issues, that even with the best prevention, doctors were not seeing people overcoming some of those things. So when they started to ask about adversity in early childhood, they started to see a bit of a correlation between the level of adversity that people have faced and the level of chronic health issues. So if you look to the left of the slide, you'll see the adverse childhood experiences categories, such as suffering emotional, physical, sexual abuse, emotional or physical neglect, or household dysfunction like domestic violence, substance abuse, and so forth. And when you think about the impact, I'm not going to show every single outcome, but it's pretty interesting. If you look to the colored bars, the black bar is 5, and you'll see that if somebody has 5 adverse childhood experiences, their rate or odds ratio of depression increases 5 times others. So what happens to us in early childhood really can impact our well-being. And if you look at heart disease, and you look at that far blue bar, that's somebody who has 7 to 8 adverse childhood experiences. They're 3 times more likely to suffer heart disease. But does it really mean that everybody that faces adversity in early childhood is going to end up with heart disease or depression? It doesn't, right? We want to make sure that we're putting into place those practices that really help us to get through daily hassles, take care of our well-being, not just our physical health, but our spiritual health, our environmental health. I hope this isn't true for any of you today, but how many of you have worked in an organization or a classroom where the mental health climate itself wasn't conducive to your well-being? All right, you could do this if you want, but it matters. Our environment matters, and it's really important to keep in mind for our well-being. What do we bring with us every day that we're getting into the classroom setting with families and kids? And how are we going to make sure that we're safe and secure? And that's really important for staff retention as well. So how many of you, let me just go back to that slide. You don't have to raise your hand, but I do want to just take a moment of reflection here and just allow people to think for themselves for just 30 seconds. How does this impact me? So I'm just going to pause for a moment and just see do any of these resonate for you? And you can start to ask yourself, if any of these resonate with you, do you see any correlation to your own well-being, or even triggers or things that are your hot buttons within the classrooms that you're engaging in every day? If you grew up in a house where there was domestic violence, maybe you're teaching in a classroom where the level of activity is super high and your co-teacher has a loud, domineering voice. That's something that we have to work with, understand, and be able to identify. Or we may end up saying, I just can't do this work. It's too hard for me, or something is happening where I'm uncomfortable when I go to work every day. I think these are also really important categories to think about when we think about our kids and families. Like the prior speaker was talking about just operating under trauma-informed care. It's so important. How many kids are really acting out on a daily basis because things might be going on at home? Things that they don't even have the words to express or talk about yet. All right, so I'm going to take you to today, and it's not a lovely thing to talk about stress, but it is reality for many of us that some stress you often hear is good, right? If I'm in a dark alley in a new city, I don't want to say, okay, let me think this through, let me calm down, and I hear a noise behind me. I'm going to take off. That stress level is going to keep me safe. But sometimes daily stressors can become chronic and cause us to feel physically ill, emotionally not well, and so forth. So I'm going to share some feedback from a recent report from the American Psychological Association that they do annually on stress. So see if this resonates with you. 35% of adults say their stress has increased in the past year. Does anybody agree with that? Raise your hands if you... All right. All right. Okay, got it. 33% of adults say that they don't discuss ways to manage their stress in their annual visits with their primary care provider. How does that resonate with you? True? Okay. These are some statistics from risk within Head Start programs. There tends to be high rates of maternal depression, comorbidity with partner violence and substance abuse, and you're dealing with a lot of poverty, to name a few, a lot of risk factors. I recently, gosh, this was just yesterday, I read a report from an LA County First 5 study that had happened, and they were interviewing all of their early childhood teachers, and the rates of depression for the teachers themselves was higher than the national average. So a lot's happening for a lot of us who are working in the field. Yeah.
My son's doctor a lot because he says that we're all like deficient and, in low in vitamin D. And it's interesting, I read a study recently that Michigan has a higher rate of depression than most, in other places than in the United States. And I just thought I ought to pause and reflect on that a little bit because of our lack of sunlight in the winter, kind of that the cloud cover we have, just might be something we might want to think about, as it relates to mental health. And we may have higher levels, or people may be reporting more because of that.
It's a good point. I hadn't heard that statistic, but I think the other thing that, this is a totally different presentation, but it made me think about it when you said it, is that if every one of us in this room could become champions for normalizing mental health and talking about how we feel, even when it's not good, we could totally change the landscape for kids. I may not see it in my lifetime, but I imagine that there could be a day that every mom or child could go to somebody and say, I'm worried about the way that I feel and I need help. I speak about the UP in my culture. You never talked about how you felt. And I don't think that's untrue for many cultures in terms of normalizing mental health and how we feel. So talking about wellness, we're really, in some ways, talking about mental health. But when you say mental health, people automatically tend to think mental illness. So there's still a real stigma behind it, but I'm going to look more into what you were just talking about, too. That's interesting. All right. So when you think about the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, and you think about the stressors that you all are dealing with on a day-to-day basis, I'm going to just ask that for maybe a minute or two, you just turn to somebody next to you and you talk a little bit about what kind of risk factors are resonating with all of you right now. What are some of the things that you're dealing with day to day that are becoming a little bit more than just those daily hassles, like you run out of coffee? That's mine. All right, so I'll just give you a minute or two to turn and talk, and then we'll come back and share a little bit. All right. Okay, is anybody willing to share some? Oh, we're still talking about stress. I know, right? We only just got started. So, is anybody willing to just throw out some words that came up? Or you can go to the microphone. What kinds of things are popping up for all of you? Health. Say more. Oh, little aches and pains, yeah. Might be a little more creaky when you get up in the morning, not feeling quite as good. What else is stressing you out? Maybe I'm stressing you out already by talking about stress. I don't know. Time management. There never seems to be enough time in the day to get everything done that you need to. And then somebody's asking you for more, maybe. Exhaustion. When do you ever get to really sleep in and not have anything in the back of your brain going around?
We talked about starting a new job.
Ooh, yeah, starting a new job. Staffing, shortages. Yeah. Sometimes this may not be true for any of you, but sometimes there are staff relationship issues that are stressful, right? I will say that, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say interpersonal, like things
Yes.
either within yourself or, you know, like you mentioned, coworkers or even familial things that are going on in your
Yes.
own family. Like, I think there's a lot of people that have multiple stressors, you know, substance use. I mean, there's just, and then prior trauma, like from your own, you know, childhood also.
Yeah. It's a lot. It really is a lot when you think about it. I think about this as such a joy in my own personal life, but I think some of you know me. I talk about my grandson all the time now. You're probably tired of it. He's 9 months. It's our first. And we're the backup family. We live a half a mile away from where Ezra lives, and once in a while, it will need to be the case where he needs to be dropped off because mom is sick or something happens with childcare. And just a couple of weeks ago, I had a meeting. You know, one of those meetings where you cannot cancel? And I was trying to figure out what to do, and he's sitting in my lap, and his lip is coming out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I do this for a living. I teach about social and emotional health, and his little lips coming out. And anyway, we all have stress in lots of different ways, but even though some of it is good, and we have these risks, I think if we're aware of them and there are things that we can put into place to offset it just a little bit, we can start to outweigh the risk with a lot of protection that we're building for ourselves. So maybe it's checking in with a friend once a day or at least once a week. Maybe it's getting that extra hug you need from your partner that morning before you go to work when you know it's going to be a hard day. Literally, one thing, one time a day can make a shift. It sounds too simple, but it's true. I think sometimes I'll speak for myself, what I ended up doing is I have to fix it all or I don't do anything. But you do one little thing, and then you can do another little thing, and before you know it, things start to turn around. So one thing that I think we have to be really careful about is secondary trauma or vicarious trauma. So what happens to us if we start to hear about hardship day after day after day, it starts to live with us. We start to carry it, and we may carry it for many, many families, and we really need a way to let it go. So I don't know how many of you in here are administrators. How many of you are in a classroom day to day? How many of you are administrators? Who did I miss? What? Everybody? Everyone else? Tell me more. Somebody shoot out your role. Just yell out what your role is. Beyond administrator, teacher. Consultants. Okay, how many of you are consultants? There we go. Okay. So one thing that I think is really important to just think about putting into place organizationally is a space for staff, consultants, administrators, and frontline staff to have a place to reflect in a safe way. And some people might be thinking, well, that costs money, and how are we going to put that into place? But what I often say is there are really creative ways to do it, and if we don't, people will be carrying that around, and eventually they may leave, or they may have such undue burden that they don't enjoy their work anymore. So what we did in Saginaw through a grant we had several years back, when we started to institute reflective supervision, people liked it so much that after the grant ended, programs started to pool together money cross-county and cross-program to really fund somebody to come in and provide that kind of support. So just a thought. So stress and health. How many of you go to work feeling like the little guy on the left? And how many of you after work feel like the little guy on the right? So I've often shared when I worked in the Upper Peninsula, I had moved back for a while, and I was doing home visiting, and sometimes I would drive 45 minutes to go to a home visit, and some days I would drive home thinking, what am I doing? I am not good at this. I don't think I can continue. And then other days I would drive home thinking, I am so good at this. I was made for this job, right? And I think a lot of us have those back and forth feelings. But when it gets to the point where you start to forget, why am I even doing this job? My performance, I'm just not giving it my all anymore, or relationships are strained most of the time. And I stop wanting to go out and enjoy the things that I normally did, that we want to start paying attention that maybe our stress is getting a little bit higher than what is healthy. So again, I'm going to have people just take a few minutes to talk to somebody you haven't talked to yet. So if you're sitting at a table of two, that might mean turning around to talk to somebody different, or just moving around at your table. Plus, it'll get our energy up. It's the end of the day. So if you could pick just one or two of these questions: how has my work impacted how I see the world? Or how has my work disrupted or altered my sense of balance? You can choose one question to answer, and then the other person can answer the next question that they choose. All right, we'll just give it a minute or two. So that means you could probably stand up and move a little bit.
All right. Oops, sorry.
Tamra, that's a pretty name. And I love
All right, I'm just going to ask that you start wrapping that up. All right. All right, everybody.
You want me to? All right, guys, if you could make your way back to your table, that would be wonderful. Thank your partners and make your way back to your table. I've got the big voice. All right, we're coming back to our tables.
All right.
I know, that's messing me up.
I think that work has really impacted you, it seems. So as I didn't walk around a ton, but what I did hear is I heard very positive things about relationships at work really having positive impact. So in some cases, when you have that kind of environment, that can become almost like a protective factor when you have an environment to go to where you're safe, you're heard, you feel listened to, and it's trusting. Any other ways that work has positively impacted you or helped to reduce stressors or improve health? Any things you'd hope for? So I'll give one example. At one of the jobs that I had, every day that I went in before I went into the classroom, our administrator did a daily huddle. So he came to work a few minutes early, and we would talk about our hopes for the day and what kind of support we needed to get there. And that felt good. That was a nice, protective, safe way to start the day, and it took 10 minutes, and everybody was heard. Any thoughts about how work has impacted, maybe disrupted or imbalanced things for anybody? Anybody's willing to? Well, maybe we don't have to share this one. Okay. All right, so this is probably obvious, but what would you say? Stress is the same for everyone. False. Stress is everywhere, so you can't do anything about it. No symptoms, no problem. False, right? Wouldn't it be lovely if that was what I told you today? You don't feel anything right now? No problem. No stress. So one thing to keep in mind is just going with your gut and recognizing your signs and symptoms, because we can forget about those unless it becomes too strong, right? How many of you, when you're getting to a level of stress, have physical symptoms like a stomach ache, a headache? Okay. Yeah. Oh, no, I'm so sorry. Your friends are causing you a little bit of a headache. Uh-oh. We might need to move you to the other side. What about emotional? Maybe you're a little more irritable. You're not sleeping as well. Yeah, you're quick to let things bother you a little bit more. You might have professional symptoms where you're not attending at meetings, you're calling in sick more often, you're having a hard time getting your tasks done in a timely way where you normally wouldn't have done that. So just like kids, we still have symptoms, and we don't want to try to cover those up. So if you're starting to feel a headache come on, or you're feeling a little irritable by the person sitting next to you, well, I wasn't calling anybody out. But that's the time when it's okay to say, I need help, I need to step out for a minute. I need to do something to take care of myself, because if we don't do it, who's going to do it for us, right? We're there to take care of our kids the minute they ask, or our families, but I think sometimes we have to allow ourselves the okay that it's not, we're not lesser than or needy because we need a mental health day, or we need something to take care of ourselves so we can come back for others. So,
Dr. Mary,
yes.
just a quick question. We actually spoke about that earlier at our table. We don't want to be disrespectful, like, hey, you need a break, you know. I was just wondering if anybody else had like a phrase, like we were trying to come up with that, or something that was like, you know, just a little more sensitive to that, because we would love to hear that. Yeah. We're taking 5.
Take 5.
Okay. Yeah.
She said take 5. I need to take 5. And I would never recommend that you tell somebody I need a break from you. That's not the way I meant to say it, but we might say maybe even just acknowledging how you feel. You know, I'm feeling my edginess come up here. I don't, you know, I want to do something about that. I need to just step away for a few. You know, and just being honest about it and being human. Because the more that we're human and transparent about it, the more comfortable others are going to feel to do that very same thing. So,
Mary?
yeah.
So just a connection to something that was in the chat earlier for the online folks. They were talking about a couple of presentations ago about the connection to the behavioral expectation matrix and how adding a row in there about staff behavior could be powerful. And I just think this is another opportunity, even in front of our students, to say, like, I need a minute, or I need to take my calming breaths, or whatever the strategy is that you're teaching your students, to model that for your students as well when we're feeling that, because then they see us using them as well, and can be such a powerful thing. And sometimes we forget that we are human. And if our students can see us using those same strategies, it can be really powerful.
Yeah, like saying, I'm feeling frustrated. I need to stop and take a deep breath, and I'll be right back, or I'll turn right back around. All right, so we spent the first little over a half an hour talking about stress and adversity, and now we're going to turn it over to wellness. And if we know that we're all dealing with stress and adversity happens, what are we going to do to really fill ourselves up so when things do happen, we don't crumble, that foundation doesn't crack? So when we think about wellness, it's conscious. It's something that we need to be mindful about, that we can direct. It includes the physical environment, the spiritual, I guess you can just say holistic, right? It's an active process. It doesn't happen in a day. It's something we just need to be mindful and thinking about on a regular daily basis. Maybe you wake up in the morning tomorrow and you say, what's one thing that I'm going to do to promote my wellness today? It might be, getting to work 5 minutes early so it's not quite as busy when you get started. Something simple, or when I feel frustrated, I'm going to take 3 breaths and, walk away for a minute. Something simple. So again, when you think about the pyramid model that you've been talking about all day today, there's so much that we do to create those high-quality environments and nurturing, responsive care for young kids. We engage in those targeted social supports for children at risk, and then for some children, we engage in those intensive interventions, and you are the effective workforce holding it all together. So when we think about that, we know that staff who feel better are really better equipped and ready to provide that high-quality, nurturing care that all of our kids and families really need. So I'm going to show you a video, and what I want you to, this is just 30 seconds in the day of a family. And what I want you to think about is, what does this adult need in order to be able to give to a young child? We know from research that more than 1 million neurons are connecting during serve and return interactions. Think about that for a minute. What happens if we're too stressed to respond to a baby or a preschooler? That's what happens sometimes when we're at high levels of stress, that we can disengage a little bit and become distracted. All right, so it's going to take about 7 minutes for the video to start, and I just want you to think about, what does that adult need in order to provide the proper care to this infant?
Uh-oh. My baby. Oh.
Don't you love it? Oh, I just love that. But imagine that baby's brain is on fire because that adult is able to serve and return between that adult and baby together. So what I want to think about is, imagine that there is a job posting for a new a teacher, caregiver in your programs that you support. And think about, what characteristics does an early childhood professional really need to care for young children? So you can just think for yourselves. You can talk to your neighbor if you want to, but maybe jot down 1 or 2 of the top characteristics that you feel an early childhood provider needs to have coming into the job and being able to really care well for young kids. Okay? Just pause. I'll give you like a minute to just think of maybe the top 2 characteristics that come to mind. All right. All right, everybody. I probably didn't give you long enough, but I did hear the word friendly. What else? What other words came to mind? Empathy, patience, friendly, nurturing, sense of humor, self-aware, flexibility, willing to learn, be flexible. So one thing that I didn't hear is, how do I want to say this? It's all about relationships and social and emotional well-being of the adults in order to give what a baby or a toddler or a young child needs, right? Because with that flexibility, that empathy, that kindness, that understanding, that ability to learn, kids are going to thrive. So I think when we think about what all of our kids and our families need from us, they need adults that are all of those things. And so how do we do that for ourselves so we can show up this way? So that's what we're going to talk about next. So many of you, if have worked in the infant mental health field at all, you've heard of this parallel process. It's not the old saying, but it's the different saying of do unto others as you would have others do unto others. So as an administrator, I want to be able to support in a nurturing, flexible, empathetic way the teachers so they can better support the families who can then better support their children. if any one of those pieces is broken or falling down a little bit, you're going to notice an organizational shift in the amount of stress or the emotional tone of an organization or a program. And they all work together. I didn't program this. Anyway, so in uncertain times, we can take care of ourselves and take care of each other to really create what we call organizational resilience. So some of you in this room may have heard of the Devereaux Early Childhood Assessment. Some of us in our Part C early intervention use that assessment tool. I was part of a team that helped to create that social and emotional assessment for kids birth to 3, and then there's a version for pre-K as well. But when we think about really young kids, what we found in the research and the literature is when we look at resilience in very young children, we look at their attachment, initiative, and self-regulation. Those are the main components that tend to come out, which is really social and emotional health. We knew that in order for young kids to grow social and emotional health, we have to look at the social and emotional health of the adults that care for them. So we did a separate instrument and study on adult resilience. And it's very interesting how much it mirrored the kids, which isn't going to surprise any of you, but we looked at over 80 peer-reviewed studies to look at resilience in adults. And what we found is there are 4 components that can lead to that ability to bounce back and deal with daily hassles a little bit easier. Paying attention to your internal beliefs, relationships that you surround yourselves with, taking initiative, and having self-control. Easier said than done, right? So I'm going to talk just a little bit about some tips and tools for these areas. So internal beliefs are those things that we walk around with in our head. Beliefs and feelings and thoughts we have about ourselves, how effective we think we are, and so forth. So if our internal beliefs are positive, if I wake up in the morning and I say to myself, you know, I've got this presentation today, I've done it before, I'll do great. I love this work. I'm probably going to have a better outcome than if I wake up saying, oh my gosh, I'm going to fail. I'm probably going to trip off of the stage. Something bad's going to happen. You know, like all those things. I'm likely going to be nervous, and it may not go as well. So when we have positive internal beliefs, we're more likely to set goals and actually follow through because we believe that we can. We learn from our mistakes. We give praise to others. We trust ourselves, and we go with our gut. So how do we get there? So how many of you have coworkers or maybe even find some of this thinking for yourselves? Maybe during the day things come to mind like, this won't work, I can't, things are going to always be like this. What do you think is going to happen if those are some of our internal thoughts? They'll come true, right? I can't, so then I won't try. Things are always going to be like this, so it's going to be really hard for me to step aside and see things in a different way and have a level of hope. So what can we do? We can practice. One of the things that we can be accountable for is when we try to be mindful of when something comes out in our mind or out in our verbalizations of something negative, is to try to practice turning around one statement a day. And before you know it, it just becomes part of your practice. I'm happy for another opportunity. If I hear myself say, oh, I can't do that, I'll do my best. Maybe it won't be perfect, but I'll try, right? Or I've noticed small changes. So if somebody says, or you hear yourself saying things are always going to be like this, maybe try to notice some of those small changes. So how many of you have ever heard of thought-stopping behavior? It's going to sound simple. We do this with kids, but it works with us as grown-ups too. So one of the things that you can do is if you are mindful and you are walking down the street or walking into a classroom and something negative comes to mind, you pick a word like stop and you reframe, and before you know it, it starts to become the way that you do business. You stop those negative behaviors or thoughts right in their tracks, because if we don't stop them, negative thoughts can start to impact our energy, our mood, and eventually our behavior. So if we can stop them before it gets to us and really impacts that behavior, it's something that we can use with young kids and families as well. So it's a pretty simple technique, but it lives forever because it actually really works. So that's one strategy you can try for internal thoughts. So I'm just going to ask this as a large group here. How do you think our internal beliefs about ourselves impact our practices with kids and families? Any general thoughts? Positive. If our internal thoughts are really positive, they're going to come out that way with kids and families. And, you know, we were talking about implicit bias earlier, and sometimes I think when we can be, when we're feeling good about ourselves, we're more open to seeing differences and acknowledging those without fear. So it can play into that as well. Relationships. How many of you have at least one person in the world who loves you to pieces? Raise your hand really high. Okay. And imagine what the world would be like if you didn't have that one person that loved you to pieces, right? Every baby in the world needs at least one person who thinks they are the best thing ever. And everybody is lucky enough to have that one person. You call when you're not feeling good, you call to celebrate, they're there for you, they accept you in the ups and the downs. So one of the things that we can do, and relationships are not those casual, I meet you in the hallway and you seem like a nice person, right? It's that back and forth interaction, long-lasting bonds that we have. It's that friend you can just look at through a side eye and you know that they're thinking the same thing that you're thinking, right? So research actually supports that suggests a significant relationship between higher levels of having social support and your overall physical and emotional health. So one of the activities from the adult resilience work that we did is called the Circle of Trust. So let me see, we have about a little over 10 minutes left. So what I'm going to have you do is just take 30 seconds to reflect, and if you have a piece of paper and a pen, you don't have to share this with anybody, just jot down 3 or 4 people that would live within what you call your circle of trust. That means you would share things with them that you trust they'll keep confidential. You go to them when you need help, when you want to celebrate. Just take a moment to jot down their names, and you're not going to share this with anybody. All right. So one of the things that you can do to build those relationships that really help to protect you are to reach out to one of those people in your circle of trust and let them know how important they are to you and how much you appreciate what they bring to your life. Because sometimes, I don't want to say anybody takes it for granted, but you know, it just becomes part of our life, and it's nice to let people know, and it brings joy to them, and it brings joy to you. All right. So the other piece of building our own wellness and resilience is initiative, so that ability to make choices and decisions and act upon them. So if something is happening at work or with a family, that we're able to take initiative to talk about it, get support, ask for help. I'm actually going to give you all a resource in just a few minutes that will have some initiative behaviors on it that I'm going to have you self-reflect on in just a few minutes here. And the last piece is self-control, so that ability to experience all of our emotions in a productive manner. So imagine if every adult in the world had healthy self-control skills. What would the world look like? Right? Different in many ways. So the good news is it's never too late to learn self-control skills. And I'm not saying anybody in here is dysregulated. I see a lot of people tapping their fingers, chewing gum, doing lots of things to stay motivated and attentive today. So one of the things that I think many of us have heard about already is mindfulness. So just paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, being present in the moment. So we're going to practice just a moment of mindfulness. And for those that are online, I'm just going to have you sort of self-reflect on what I'm asking people to do here. You can just jot down some of your reflections. So what I'd like you to do is, it can be the person next to you or somebody else. I want every person to move their chair to face another individual. And if it happens to be, and I'm not going to make you do anything scary, you're just going to talk. So just know that it's going to be all right. And if there's 3 people, if somebody is left out, you can let a third person join if you want to, but I want you to actually move and physically face each other for a moment, and then I'll tell you what we're going to do. All right, are we ready? Okay. Everybody's facing somebody physically? All right. So here's your instructions. So one person is going to talk for about a minute, and you're going to share one thing that, actually, let's make this positive. We're talking about wellness. Share one thing that you look forward to this week, okay? And the only thing that the other person has to do is fully listen. You don't have to respond. You don't have to do anything. Keep your phone away. All you need to do is actively listen. And then when that person is done sharing for a full minute, then the other person shares, and the other person's responsibility is just to fully listen. If you can't fill it up in 1 minute of what you look forward to, maybe you talk a little bit about how you came into this conference today. What was that like for you? And what's one thing you hope for the week? Okay? All right, I'll let you get started. All right. You can go back or you can stay. So for those of you that were, all of you hopefully had a chance to listen. I think I heard somebody say I failed because they wanted to talk and respond. But how did it feel to be able to fully listen with no distraction? Anybody willing to share? What was that experience like? Did it feel different from how you might normally listen in a regular way throughout your day? Sometimes aren't we hurried and yeah. So when we're all in and we can put distractions away and be really mindful, we might hear things a little differently or experience things a little differently. So what did it feel like to be listened to? Anybody willing to share? Did you feel heard? What was that like? And how often does that happen in your daily routine? Not enough. There you go. You know, it feels like a gift when somebody really hears you without listening to respond. But they're listening to really, really hear you. How many of you have tried to share a problem with somebody and they have a solution like that? And it's like, but wait, I don't want a solution. I just want you to hear me. So that's another practice is just maybe you wake up tomorrow and the one thing you do tomorrow is I'm going to be mindful in one conversation at work tomorrow. Just one. Every distraction is going to be put away. I'm going to look directly at that person and I'm not going to listen to respond. I'm going to listen to hear. And then maybe you'll get some of that mirrored back to you. So it's a really wonderful technique that I know we hear mindfulness almost every day, everywhere we go, but the actual practice itself, I think, takes practice day to day. So there's lots of different mindfulness types of activities that you can try, but this is one that I really find impactful. So when we're talking about wellness, research says that it does improve mental and physical health. It helps us to increase our impulse control, reduce our blood pressure. It is calming when somebody really listens and we actively attend. So the last thing that we're going to do today is, this is the resource that I talked about that we created as part of the Devereaux Early Childhood Assessment Program for young kids building their social and emotional health. This is the Devereaux Adult Resilience Survey. This is for us. So this can be used in lots of different ways. Some people have started book clubs, or administrators have worked with those they support to fill it out so they could find out ways to really support their team or individuals. So what I'd like you to do in just a few minutes here, you're not going to, and nobody's going to have to share the results with anybody. So what I'd like you to do is just spend about 3 minutes filling out 1 or 2 sections of the tool. And this is free online. You can download as many copies as you like. So just take a moment to fill out a couple of these questions so you get an idea about the kinds of behaviors that are going to help you to build your initiative, self-control, relationships, and so forth. Okay. So again, this is just another resource for all of you to have access to, something to think about that really brings us back to what we need so we can do better for our kids and families and for our own families too. So if you flip the Devereaux Adult Resilience Survey to the back, you'll see that there's a little planning form where you can look at your strengths. You can come up with one thing that maybe you want to do this week. What I would like to do is at least 3 people, if you could share one of your strengths. So if you look at that front and you had any almost always or even a sometimes, is anybody willing to share one thing that you have a strength in? One of the items? I know you've got strengths. I know it. Yes, go ahead.
I have good friends who support me.
Oh, good. Good friends that support me. What else? Oh, you're lovable. Oh, I love it. Ah, okay. Yay. You're going to be getting a lot of hugs when this is over. All right, what else? How about somebody else? One more.
I laugh often.
Good. I laugh often. See, just hearing those strengths makes us happy, right? And these other ones, you can kick it up a notch. One thing in one day over a week, and you can totally change that behavior. And these are simple, everyday things that you can do as part of your daily routine. So you know how sometimes you get ideas and you think, oh, God, I'm never going to have time for that. You got time for these kinds of small changes. So with that, I am hoping that everybody goes out the door today doing something positive for themselves. And just remember that healthy adults build healthy children, and you all matter. You're the foundation, and you deserve it. So I hope you have a good rest of your night and a good rest of your week. And I think, should we stop for questions or any comments?
If there are questions.
Any questions that anybody has? Or any last thoughts for how you're going to take care of yourself? Do something nice for yourself tonight if you're staying overnight. I heard people in the hallway talking about, let's go look at the pool. Let's go for a walk. Let's get a good dinner.
All right, if there are no questions, if you could join me in thanking Mary for her presentation.